This dissertation explores the integration of biophilic design principles within the field of graphic design with the aim of communicating nature's presence through digital and visual media. Grounded in the central theme of biophilic forms, nature's language in graphic design, the research investigates how nature-inspired aesthetics, forms, and concepts can be embedded in a variety of graphic outputs, including branding, typography, signage, and print. The methodology follows a practice-based design approach that produced 5 distinct but interconnected creative projects: a brand identity, a poster series with AI-generated visuals, a wayfinding system, a modular typeface, and a printed scene. Each project contributes to the overreaching narrative of how design can reintroduce sensory and emotional connection to nature within urban and digital environments. The study critically evaluates the formal, conceptual, and communicative effectiveness of the work while examining relevant precedents and literature. By engaging with artists, studios, and theorists such as Universal Everything Wynite Associates, Anthony Burrell, and E.O. Wilson, the dissertation situates its design work within a wider theoretical and practical discourse. The outcome aims to advocate for transformative graphic design that not only informs the decorates, but also contributes to mental well-being and ecological consciousness. The 21st century has seen a growing need to integrate sustainable and restorative principles into everyday environments, especially in densely urbanized areas. Biophilic design, defined by Edward O. Wilson as the innate human affinity for the natural world, has gained prominence in architecture and interior design but remains underexplored within the field of graphic design. As digital environments become dominant, there is a pressing need for graphic design to respond not only functionally but also emotionally and ecologically. This dissertation investigates the role of graphic design in mediating nature's presence in digital and urban spaces by adopting biophilic principles in form, texture, and concept. Project Biophilic Forms, Nature's Language in Graphic Design serves as both as conceptual and practical exploration of this theme. Conducted as a self-initiated final year project, it involves a series of experimental design outputs that reimagine how visual communication can foster psychological, sensory, and emotional engagement with natural environments and elements. This included a brand identity system, an AI-aided poster and animation series titled Digital Flora, a modular wayfinding project, The Living Grid, a custom typeface inspired by organic forms, and a printed zine that curates and contextualizes the entire body of work. The central research question is, how can biophilic forms can be translated into graphic design in ways that are emotionally compelling, ecologically meaningful, and visually innovative? Subsidiary questions include what are the aesthetics and communicative qualities of biophilic design in two-dimensional media? How can experimental graphic design approaches address the climate crisis, resource scarcity, and urban disconnection? Where and how can these things function effectively in a real-world context, such as specific neglected areas in Leeds? Review and theoretical framework, biophilic design, origins and benefits. The concept of biophilia was popularized by biologist Edward O. Wilson, who proposed that humans have an instinctive bond with other living systems. Later extended by Stephen Kellert and others, and theory became foundational in architectural and environmental design, where biophilic elements are shown to improve mental health, reduce stress, and increase cognitive function. Recent architectural studies emphasize the importance of direct plants and water, indirect natural materials, light, and symbolic patterns and imagery, experiences of nature, Ryan. While these principles are applied to buildings, interiors, and landscapes, graphic design offers a platform to convey similar sensorial and emotional qualities at different scales and through different channels. Nature in graphic design. Nature has long influenced graphic design, manifesting in organic forms, botanical illustrations, and texture-driven layouts. In contemporary practice, however, the translation of biophilic aesthetics into digital media remains relatively marginal. Designers such as Anthony Burrell, known for his environmental conscious messaging, and studios like Universal Everything, who integrate motion and fluidity into naturalistic visuals, exemplify how design can be emotionally impactful and ecologically conscious.
Biophilic graphic design goes beyond decoration. It has the potential to inform transformative communication. FAUKT Magazine's Nature's issue and O32C's and experimental layouts provide editorial and visual precedents. Typographic experimentation by Bjork collaborators and generative systems developed by Why Not Associates show how digital tools can reflect natural rhythms and behaviors. AI, sustainability, and visual culture. Artificial intelligence plays a significant role in contemporary design workflows. However, its environmental costs, especially in the form of data center emissions and energy-intensive training, raises questions about its sustainability. This project navigates these contradictions by using AI tools for visual ideation, while thematically addressing their paradoxical role in shaping eco-conscious futures. The tension between high-tech and nature is central to the theme of digital nature. Methodology. This practice-led project follows a design research methodology combining visual experimentation, contextual analysis, and iterative prototyping. The creative process involved extensive image making, typographic element and development, branding, motion graphics, and print media. Each sub-project was developed to test and communicate biophilic principles across media, while contributing to a unified brand narrative. Software such as Adobe Creative Suite, Runway ML, and generative plugins were used to create the visual components. The methodology also included environmental scanning of neglected leads locations, semiotic research of natural forms, and typographic pattern studies. The projects are not just speculative for their own sake, rather they serve as propositions for how graphic design could respond to ecological and urban crises. The audience for the work includes city planners, architects, artists, and the general public. Emotional tone and communication type were categorized as experimental, positive, informative, radical, mind-opening, decorative, and transformative. The emotional vocabulary included terms like organic, natural, calm, sensorial, fresh, breathable, and clear. The brand identity biophilic forms. The initial project established a cohesive visual language under the title Biophilic Forms, serving as the thematic and conceptual foundation for all subsequent outputs. The aim was to craft a brand identity that visually communicates the philosophy of biophilic design. The logo, color palette, typography, and supporting assets were designed to embody nature's presence in both symbolic and emotional terms. The logo system employs fluid, irregular shapes that mimic organic growth and natural asymmetry, rejecting the rigid geometries typical of corporate identities. Inspired by cellular structures and branching systems found in nature, such as venation in leaves or river deltas, this form offers visual cues that evoke familiarity and comfort, and also going back to the pattern of seed of life. The typeface chosen, a modified sans serif with softened terminals, supports a feeling of approachability and warmth. The color scheme integrates greens, soft browns, and off-whites inspired by forest floors, moss, and stone. These choices align with biophilic design principles, which advocate for earth tone palettes that reduce visual fatigue and increase perceived well-being. Texture was integrated through vectorized overlays resembling bark, lichen, and foliage, each style to retain scalability and clarity in print and screen applications. By intentionally avoiding oversaturation or hyper-digital effects, the identity maintains a grounded aesthetic. It resonates with movements such as slow design and eco-design, which emphasize tactility, connection, and ethical production. Visually, the brand draws subtle influence from the editorial direction of King Folk and serial magazines, where minimalism meets materiality. In contextual use, the brand identity was applied across hypothetical environmental initiatives, wayfinding systems for neglected leads locations, digital campaigns promoting green urbanism, and educational materials for sustainability workshops. These real-world simulations demonstrate how the identity modular elements retain coherence while adapting the varied content and contexts. The brand identity serves as the central visual language from which all subsequent projects stem. Inspired by natural growth systems and non-linear patterning, the identity explores how logos, color palettes, and textures can embody biophilic qualities. The palette's soft greens, earth tones, and mossy pinks were selected for its calming natural associations, referencing to the attention restoration theory. The logo, a modular grid with branching motifs, was informed by fractal geometries observed in Fern's entries. The brand's collateral stationery, iconography, digital assets prioritizes a breathable organic layout system. The use of generous, white space, curvilinear forms, and sans serif pairing draws from nature's balance and structure and flow. The work of design studio Muir McNeil influenced the modular grid, while Studio Airport's work on typography and natural textures provided precedent. This project set the tone for cohesive visual language grounded in theoretical biophilic values. The identity functions not just as aesthetic scaffolding, but also as a conceptual anchor, reinforcing the ecological intent of the entire series. Conceptual overview. The Biophilic Leads brand identity was designed to serve as the unifying visual language across all 5 projects, acting as both a conceptual anchor and communicative tool. Rooted in the principle of biophilic design, the identity system employs natural forms, generative textures, and a calming, organic color palette to convey a sense of environmental harmony and clarity. The aim was to bridge ecological messaging with contemporary aesthetics in a way that feels both urban and restorative. The identity had to be flexible enough to adapt across media, from signage and editorial design to digital interfaces, while maintaining a coherent visual tone. Design elements. The logo mark draws inspiration from the plant cell structures and typographic lines, subtly embedding ideas of growth and connectivity. A custom grid system based on leaf venation and patterns was developed, enabling both fluid and modular layout possibilities. Typography combines a humanist sans serif with a hand-rendered display font that mimics natural erosion and asymmetry, reflecting the duality of control and chaos found in nature. The color scheme leans on muted greens, sand tones, and mineral grays, avoiding the overly saturated eco-green tropes while still evoking nature. Texture overlays, derived from scans of leaves and bark, were subtly integrated with brand collateral to create tactile depth. Evaluation and theoretical context. This identity references the communication power of design as discussed by Bruce Mo's Massive Change, which argues for designer responsibility of shaping ecological futures. It also echoes the theories of nature's symbolism from Jungian physiology, where recurring organic forms stimulate archetypal responses of safety, memory, and life. Critically, the project walks a line between natural authenticity and design stylization. While it avoids greenwashing cliches, the reliance of digital reproduction means that the sensorial quality of physical materials is only partially evoked. Nonetheless, user feedback during critiques suggested that the identity succeeded in creating a restorative and intriguing first impression. Design approach and aesthetic choices. The color palette was developed using nature photography and in-situ observation, focusing on muted greens, earthy browns, warm neutrals, and soft pinks. These hues were selected for their physiological impact. Colors like green and beige are associated with calmness, freshness, and clarity, and their ability to evoke a tactile connection with the natural world. Typography was chosen to balance organic softness with modern readability, pairing a rounded sans serif with a serif that mimics the irregularity of bark or stone erosion. Logo variations were created using generative techniques to allow for a living, breathing feel, reflecting the ever-changing nature of the environment. The core brand symbol, a stylus leaf grid hybrid, functions both as a decorative icon and as a metaphor of networks of connectivity in nature. This reflects Wilson's biophilia hypothesis that just in visuals, but in concept, suggesting an interesting bond between user and design. Influence and theoretical grounding. The work is underpinned by E.O. Wilson's concept of innate human-nature connection and Stephen Keller's categories of biophilic design, especially the emphasis on symbolic and indirect experiences. The brand does not use literal images of nature, but instead communicates its essence through abstraction and pattern. This aligns with Keller's emphasis of symbolic biophilia, which suggests that even stylized references to nature can produce restorative effects. In addition, The visual identity is inspired by the emotionally engaging yet restrained work of Anthony Burrell, whose typographic posters use minimalism to amplify ecological messaging. Similarly, universally everything uses organic motion and shifting from influence the design's flexibility and adaptiveness across contexts. Critical reflection and challenges. A key challenge in this project was maintaining coherence across different brand assets while allowing for variation in play. Nature inherently irregular and embracing in a brand system required rethinking the typical grid and alignment rules of corporate identity design. This tension between order and organicism was resolved by using generative structures and fractal logic as the basis for layout and composition. However, the raised questions about legibility and accessibility, especially in digital environments where clarity must be balanced with aesthetic innovation. Another consideration was the ecological impact of digital design itself. While the identity promotes nature connectedness, its production, especially screen-based elements, inevitably relies on devices and infrastructures with environmental costs. This contradiction is acknowledged but not fully resolved, highlighting the complexity of sustainable communication design in a technologically mediated world. As the anchor for the entire suite of projects, the brand identity provided a unified design ethos, one that values emotional connection, ecological thinking, and sensory richness. Its adaptable system was used throughout the poster series, wayfinding, and zine layouts, creating continuity while allowing each sub-project to interpret the identity in its own way. This modularity reflects the decentralized yet interconnected nature of ecosystems, reinforcing the project's conceptual core. Poster and motion series Digital Flora. The second project, titled Digital Flora, explored how AI-generated imagery could serve as a bridge between the digital and organic. This poster and motion series interrogated the paradox of using machine learning to stimulate natural growth, pattern, and decay. Runway ML was used to generate textures and forms that resemble plant life, coral structures, and microscopic ecologies. These visuals were then layered, composited, and animated in After Effects to create a sense of evolving ecosystems. Aesthetically, the outcomes echo the work of Universal Everything and Horrific Anadol, whose use of generative visuals reflects organic dynamism through code and algorithm. However, unlike purely abstract generative art, Digital Flora aimed to retain a semblance of biological plausibility, encouraging viewers to associate the digital forms with familiar natural references. The posters utilize large-scale compositions with negative space, allowing the biophilic elements to breathe. Motion graphics were designed to loop seamlessly, mimicking the perpetual growth found in time-lapse plant videos or coral expansion. These cycles suggest ecological continuity and resilience, themes central to biophilic theory. Nevertheless, the project confronts a critical tension: the ecological cost of AI. While the visuals promote environmental consciousness, their production relies on energy-intensive computational processes. This contradiction invites a broader conversation about sustainability in digital design, a point made by Pavaluca in his critique of the geology of media. As a design response, the series foregrounded transparency with labels informing viewers about the tools and energy costs of each work. In this way, Digital Flora becomes both artwork and critique, aesthetically seductive yet conceptually aware of its implications. It echoes what Kate Crawford describes as the hidden costs of AI aesthetics, a tension which this project actively surfaces rather than conceals. This poster and motion series explores the juxtaposition of synthetic and organic through the use of AI-generated plant forms. Runway ML and Midjourney were used to prompt visual interpretation of hybrid ecosystems and post-human nature. The results were curated, manipulated, and layered with typography to produce surreal visuals that oscillate between digital alienation and natural immersion. The use of motion design was inspired by Universal Everything's fluid visual systems and nature-centric animations. Posters adopt a temporal quality using blur and transparency to suggest the ephemeral nature of ecosystems. The AI outputs also reference the notion of digital tactility, forms that appear touchable despite their virtual origin. Conceptually, the project critiques the reliance on AI in creative processes, while simultaneously harnessing it to purpose more fluid, emergent, and multisensory approaches to eco-visualization. It embodies the project's central contradiction. Can high-tech tools reconnect us to low-tech embodied experiences? This AI-assisted series explores generative representations of plant-like forms using Runway ML image synthesis tools. The results, otherworldly yet familiar, present a visual mediation on nature's adaptability and evolution, inviting contemplation of what nature even means in a digital future. Were created using these images integrated with typographic overlays that offer poetic reflections or environmental facts. Animations extend the static compositions into gentle, breathing, morphing visuals, mimicking the movement in grass, in the wind, or flowers blooming. Inspired by studios like Universal Everything and Ref Anadol, this work challenges traditional ideas of static print and linear narrative. The paradox lies in using energy-intensive AI to advocate for ecological consciousness. However, this tension is intentional, reflecting Vinuesa ed. Analysis of AI dual role in both advancing and threatening sustainability. That posters ask, can digital design generate empathy for nature, even while contributing to its strain? The third project, Wayfinding System, The Living Grid. The Living Grid proposed a modular wayfinding system for neglected and overlooked urban green spaces in Leeds. It applied the biophilic visual language established in the brand identity to spatial graphics, signage, and urban navigation. The signage system incorporated organic patterns and local ecological references, such as common mosses, lichens, or tree species found in the area. Shapes were derived from generative algorithms based on L systems which simulate natural growth and branching. Each sign also embedded QR codes linking to short-form environmental education content and enhancing direction and learning. Typography was set in the custom typeface developed in Project 4, maintaining a visual continuity across platforms. Materials for the signage were imagined as recycled aluminum coated with bioplastics or lithium-friendly surfaces, drawing on precedent from environmental design studios such as Node Berlin and Landwork Studio. Functionally, the system aims to reframe perception, turning neglected areas into intentional experiences. It echoes Jane Jacobs' argument for eyes on the street, in this case reinterpreted as eyes on nature. Wayfinding becomes more than navigation. It becomes a tool for reconnection, pause, and attentiveness to microecologies often ignored in urban spaces. From a communication design perspective, the project draws from the participatory ethos of design for social innovation, allowing users to co-create meaning through interaction with signs and spaces. Rather than impose direction, the system suggests paths while leaving room for exploration and surprise, mimicking nature's irregularities. This system was conceived for neglected urban spaces in Leeds, identified through site visits and mapping. Inspired by mycelial networks and leaf venations, the signage system employs a fractal module logic. Acrylic panels attached with flowing pathways, interchangeable arrows, and naturalistic typeface modules reflect natural logic while offering practical directional guidance. Materiality played a key role. Mockups were created using recycled wood textures, translucent overlays, and botanical stencils to simulate environmental harmonies. Influences include the urban ecology's work of artist Fritz Hagen and the environmental typography explored by Wynand Associates in projects like the Concrete Poetry series for Clapham. This speculative wayfinding project proposes biophilic signage for neglected urban zones in Leeds. Inspired by grid-based design in urban mycelium networks, the visual language uses curved lines and adaptive color schemes to mimic natural flows. The signage features tactile materials like wood and textured composites and proposes interactive AR layers revealing seasonal or environmental data. Influenced by nature-inspired systems, such as those designed by Studio Tilt and artist collective Newman for Use, the signs are meant to guide both physically and psychologically, encouraging exploration, pause, and environmental reflection. Here, biophilic design becomes site-specific and participatory. It illustrates that graphic design can function as spatial and emotional infrastructure, not just surface communication. This project reclaims wayfinding as an ecological act, not just a navigational one. Project 4. Modular Typeface Biophilic Type. The fourth project focused on typographic experimentation, culminating in Biophilic Type, a modular display typeface influenced by natural forms. The goal was to craft a type system that feels alive, irregular, and suggestive of organic rhythm. Each letter form was constructed from interchangeable patterns, circles, stems, nodes, and curves that follow branching logic found in mycelium networks and root systems, and also the patterns of seed of life. While maintaining legibility, the typeface exaggerates contrast and irregularities, rejecting mechanical uniformity. It draws influence from typefaces like Puff by Supercontinent and Tesseract by Carl Norred, which prioritizes visual play over strict typographic convention. In usage, biophilic type excels as a headline or decorative element ideal for posters, environmental graphics, or publication covers. It was used throughout the living grid and digital flora to unify the visual language across platforms. Conceptually, the typeface aligns with biophilic design's call for diversity and sensory stimulation. Just as biodiversity enriches ecosystems, typographic variation enriches visual culture. The typeface also becomes a commentary on the need for graphic systems to be more adaptable, diverse, and locally responsive. Typography, traditionally viewed as a static and neutral, is here repositioned as expressive and ecological. The work aligns with what Lupton described as critical typography, type that speaks both verbally and visually with sociocultural intent. Bioglyph is a modular typeface inspired by the structural logic of leaves, shells, and organic lattices. Letterforms begin as strict grids and are eroded, grown, and softened to create a unique hybrid, legible for yet emotive. Inspired by Björk's album's art, typographic words by Alex Stroch, the script-like natural patterns, this project reimagines the communicative potential of type. The typeface operates on multiple levels. It is a visual element, a language artifact, and a symbolic presence. Used across several posters and design spreads, Bioglif demonstrates how even typography, often associated with rigidity, can be fluid, sensorial, and alive. The project reflects findings from the literature on symbolic biophilic experiences. It proves that alphabetic forms can embody the same principle as architecture: rhythm, repetition, variation, and tactility. Project 5, as in Printed Manifesto, Process and Theme. The final project was a printed zine acting as a manifesto and documentation of the entire design journey. The format allowed for reflective writing, critical curation or process imagery, and contextual analysis of each project. It served as both a tactile artifact and communicative summary of the dissertation findings. Designed with recycled stock and Rhizome-inspired duotones, the zine foregrounds materiality and imperfection, an intentional resistance to digital sterility. Content included annotated sketches, theoretical notes, rejected prototypes, and visual experiments, offering transparency into the design process. The editorial design follows up a non-linear structure inspired by natural systems and the concept of emergence. Pages occasionally grow off the grid, overlapping images and text to mimic organic layering. Sections, titles draw from ecological lexicons, growth rings, pollination, habitat zones, emphasizing the thematic immersion. Influences include the plant, fold, and independent zines like Perdiz, which blend art, ecology, and editorial experimentation. The zine also references feminist design theory and its emphasis on care, transparency, and non-hierarchical layout. Critically, the zine functions as a decentralized thesis, one that values process over product and speculation over resolution. It invites the reader to navigate at their own pace, resisting linear consumption and echoing the unpredictability of natural systems. This final artifact served both as documentation and critical reflection. It curates the full body of work in print form, an intentional contrast to the screen-based origins of the several projects. Printed on recycled paper using risograph-inspired overlays, the zine blends editorial content, personal reflection, visual essays, and academic situation. Layout decisions drawn from FUKT magazine's irregular pacing and the immersive sequences of 032C. Content includes behind-the-scene experiments, AI outtakes, typographic processes pages, and location photographs. A central essay reflects on the tension between the control and emergence in design, echoing themes from both biophilic theory and creative practice. The zine exemplifies the project's core methodology, using design not just to present information but to provoke sensory and emotional engagement. It acts as a slow media counterpoint to fast-scrolling culture, reinforcing biophilia's emphasis on attention, mindfulness, and depth. The final project is an 8-page printed zine that curates and contextualizes the entire body of work. Acting as both portfolio and manifesto, it includes essays, visual studies, and processes documentation. The zine ties together the emotional, material, and theoretical stance of the research. Editorial influences by FUKT magazine and the plant, it layers content in a non-linear collage-like way, mimicking the organic, unpredictable structure of nature itself. It becomes a tactile artifact that champions slowness, haptic experience, and reflection. In conclusion, this project has demonstrated that biophilic principles, often confined to architecture and interior spaces, can meaningfully enrich the field of graphic design. By translating nature's forms, behaviors, and textures into visual communication, we open up new ways of designing for emotion, memory, and ecological consciousness. Each of the 5 projects explored a different facet of this approach: identity, movement, typography, space, and print. Together, they form a cohesive argument for a more sensorial, sustainable, and effective design culture. Crucially, the work engages the contradictions of our time: digital dependence, ecological crisis, and urban alienation, not by denying them, but by finding new visual languages through which to process and to respond to them. In doing so, the dissertation positions biophilic graphic design not as a nostalgic retreat into nature, but as a bold, imaginative, and necessary act of rewilding our visual environments. The exploration of biophilic design in graphic communication not only underscores the deep interconnection between humans and nature, but also presents a compelling argument for reimagining how design can contribute to emotional, ecological, and social well-being. Through the lens of biophilic principles, this dissertation has demonstrated that graphic design is not just a tool for aesthetic enhancement, but a medium that can engage with and respond to the needs of the natural world, as well as the psychological needs of its audiences. As Stephen Keller notes, biophilic design can provide people with experiences that connect them with nature, improve their health and well-being, and foster a sense of meaning and purpose in the built environment. This dissertation has sought to make these connections tangible within the context of graphic design by exploring the symbolic, emotional, and psychological impact of nature-inspired visuals. The intersection of ecological consciousness with design practice reflects the need for new visual language that speak to our current ecological crisis. In an era dominated by digital screens and constant ecological stimulation, the integration of biophilic principles into graphic design offers a necessary counterpoint to the fast-paced, often disembodied nature of modern life. By grounding design in the rhythms and cycles of the natural world, this project purposes an alternative that prioritizes slow, mindful engagement over fleeting digital interactions.
Furthermore, the project argues that biophilic graphic design is not a retreat to a nostalgic or idealized nature, but a bold reimagining of what a visual culture attuned to ecological sensitivity and emotional depth might look like. It is a necessary act of rewilding visual environments that have become increasingly sterile and disconnected from their organic roots. As digital and physical spaces continue to converge, the importance of fostering meaningful connections to nature, even through mediated forms, become increasingly vital. As this research has demonstrated, biophilic design in graphic communication is not only an aesthetic choice but a critical approach to reshaping how we relate to the world around us, fostering a renewed appreciation for nature's enduring influence on our emotional and cognitive well-being.